We all set?
Got it.
Look at that.
Yeah,
Front and
no.
center.
Somebody else.
Yeah, it's gonna turn in. It's always gonna find.
Okay, I call the meeting for Monday, June 17th. Order at 6 o'clock. Review agenda additions, removal, nothing.
Nothing I'm aware of.
Regular business is discuss the use of used unassigned water department fund balance and determine the action on the DWS RF 3-477 loan offer.
Yes, well, hopefully this is a good news meeting, of sorts. And hopefully folks had a chance to review the information that we received from the bond bank and also recently from Nemrick and Justin about accumulation of unassigned funds for the water department. And those funds are those that at the end of every budget year, when revenues either exceed expectations or expenses are less than expected, and at the end of the year, there's a so-called surplus. The question is, where has that amount of money gone from year to year to year? And the folks at Nemrick looked into it and did some research, and over the cumulative amount of that is over $400,000.
Just water and sewer.
Just water.
Just water.
Just water.
Sewer has its own.
What was the time frame?
Since 2005,
Yeah.
when we started with Nemrick.
So before that, who knows where that?
Again, we could pay someone to do that. There's no way that I could possibly go to Howden Hall and go through those boxes that are not organized.
No.
To get an extra 25 cents.
So knowing that we have this resource, it's not unlike what we do during budget season when we have unassigned funds from year to year and we pay off, we add a little allocation to the water or to the roads or sidewalks or those kinds of things. We're in that somewhat a similar situation.
So my question is that, okay, all this money's we have, we've already taken it and put it in capital funds already.
That's what I was gonna ask.
So the money that's in our general fund, is that truly unassigned?
For the water department, we believe so.
But do we know that's truly unassigned? All that's in there can't just be water, because we've taken unassigned funds and distributed it out, because the
Well-
water doesn't have a separate account,
Yeah.
right?
It does.
It does, but the money isn't kept separate.
So truly, none of the money is kept
Separate,
separate,
right.
except for
So
Sharon's.
Sharon's money is 100% not allowed by statute, and
Meaning
Bristol
reserve
Youth
funds.
Sports has their own.
no, I mean, Bristol Youth Sports has their own,
Public Works.
it technically
Highway
can't.
aid, highway aid.
Highway aid has its own,
By
and
statute, by state statute.
there's one more.
I thought you said sewer had its own,
Sewer and water are in the same statute together, and they do have their own accounts.
except the water now, but the sewer has its own, it's separated. But the
36,000.
water has been, commingled isn't
Intermingled?
the right word, in terms of the general fund, it passes through the general fund. And in this
Seems like it
case,
stopped, I guess.
Well, no, all of them do. So the way Nemrick software works is any money that is not in a separate bank account. So the grant funds, which is the worst name for that bank account because it's not grant funds. Some of it is, but some of it is money from the revolving loan fund.
Right.
It's just a mixture of money. It is basically money that the town, for
Holding.
whatever reason, however long ago that bank account was opened, said, we're gonna put this money over here. It's the capital vehicle funds, it's all that stuff that can't be touched. Anything left in the Department of Public Works, even the police, their budget lines rolls back to the general fund on Sunday. When I come in to close out the books, anything I have left on the books is gonna roll up to the general fund. It's gonna create a little flag called due to due from. And it's gonna say, Joel in the Department of Public Works had $100,000 left. If Joel comes calling for that $100,000, you have to put it back in the Department of Public Works. If you don't put it back there, you have to go to your tax, according to statute and Darlene, you have to go back to your tax base and say, we had this much money left. What do you want us to do with it? We can do things such as give tax refunds. The town, you have the authority as the select board to say, we're gonna take the surplus at the end of this year and we're gonna refund everybody $12.82. You could put it to the voters and say, do you want to create a special fund?
I guess my question is, you said it's been 19 years, it's been building up.
Mhm.
Did we, Michelle's question, did we allocate that in some capital and some other stuff. If we take
Yeah.
400,000 out of the undesignated fund, are we gonna run circle? Are we gonna have a deficit June 30th?
Well, yes, because it's tech, right? So the way you look at it is, the water department right now owes the general fund $780,000 for the Pine Street project. Because we pay for it out of the general fund.
Right.
So if we take the $496,000, that's the surplus, it's not surplus, it's money that's owed to the water department. And we say, hey, guess what, water department, you're paying back $496,000 right now, and we're only gonna borrow $270,000. That's our choice. My question is, what is the goal of the select board for the water department? Because to me, that's what tells us whether we want the loan. If the goal is for the water department to continue functioning the way they do, with not increasing any of their capital, then we should take out the minimum loan possible. If it's that we want to continue to have some form of a cushion in the water department for when emergencies come, we should take out the 780,000. And then I would hope that the select board would authorize me to open up a quick high interest CD, because every bank except two have really good rates right now at almost 5% compounding interest. We're making 150K at the end of a year, at the end of 7 months off of those kind of loans or those kind of CDs. So
If you took all of our undesignated surpluses.
just the 500,000, I didn't do anything else with the undesignated. I just took the water department 496, put it through
So,
North Country, National Bank of Middlebury and Mascoma. And we roughly, every one of them has the same interest rate, it's 4.9. Mascoma offers an extra of 4.95, and so does North Country. If we move our checking accounts there, I don't think we want to do that. I'm telling you that I don't want to do that, but if you direct me to, I will. It's just a lot of work, because all of our paid people, we have to then go back and re-sign contracts with them. But that would be $141,000. Now, if we take off the 2% that we're gonna have to pay back, right? Because it's
Over 30 years.
right. So we're still making a boatload of money. This is what Killington does. Killington takes a TAN note every June 1st for $500,000. Lucretia puts it into a bunch of different CDs, because you can only put $1 million in most CDs at most banks. She does it in 5 different banks, and she takes that money, and it's now miscellaneous revenue for the town at the end of the 7 months. It's brilliant. It's a lot of work. I'm happy to do it. I just want to know what is the goals for the select board for the water department, because if it is that we just pay back the Pine Street loan, we should take out the bare minimum, because we don't need to borrow money from ourselves, but we can borrow money from ourselves right now. The only time that would be a problem is if Brett bought a new truck and Bristol Youth Sports came knocking and said, we want our money, and the water department came knocking and said, we want that $500,000 right now, and the highway department said, we want our 300,000, we're bankrupt. So now, is that gonna happen? No. Right? Eric's not gonna come and say, well, I want my surplus that I've had in the highway department for the last 20 years. He's not
so
going
we
to.
were always told that surpluses had to roll back into the general fund, and they couldn't, unless you had a capital fund, they couldn't be, with the exception of highway. I guess highway is the exception. They can have their money and roll it over.
That is the statute for the state, for everything except for water, sewer, and highway.
When you say highway, you mean the state funds that they get?
No,
No.
the Eric's budget.
I don't know why they would get that
It's
back. I
instant.
mean,
No, we could choose to give it back, because that's why we ended up starting the capital paving fund, the sidewalk fund, because we weren't spending it by June 1st, and we were losing it back to the general fund.
Right.
My thought when I first heard this was we proceed with the loan at the full amount, because we need the debt in the water system. If we don't have the debt, we're gonna end up in the same boat with forgiveness the next time around. And then the town pays back its 2/3, 750,000, just rough numbers. It pays back its 2/3 annually to the water department, and the water department carries the note. And then we still have the money that's in that we can squirrel away and make way more than the 2%.
Right.
And I agree, because if it were just Pine Street, then I would say, let's take out the lowest debt possible, but we know it's not, like,
Right.
that's phase one of,
And that's not even the most expensive. I mean, when we get down
Right.
there, that's gonna be crazy.
And 2% is just, I
It's
mean,
cheap money.
yeah, I mean, the interest
Right,
rate.
and if we can get 4.9 on that money, that's insane. I mean, we
Right.
can make money off of loan.
Right,
But so 2 years from now, when the state decides up there in their magical way of giving us money for phase 2, you know, 6 months, a couple of miles here in town, and Steve's got planned out with Jill. And they go, wow, you've got 488,000 or 450,000 sitting in the bank account. That's,
No, they
They
won't
can't
have,
see it.
they won't have, because we'll pay it back over 30 years.
no, we're taking up to 750.
Right,
But how are we gonna pay back the water department 488 or 98,000?
every year when the bond comes due, we're gonna pay 2/3 of that out of the general fund.
I don't think we can do that. It needs to be a water department expense.
It is a water department expense, but we owe them. And we can pay them annually, just like a loan, any loan.
Like we borrowed the money from the water department and now we're
And
paying
so
it back.
now all we're doing is paying it back over 30 years, the same, every time they have to make a payment, the general fund makes a payment to them. The water
Makes a payment
department,
to who? The water
The
department?
water department.
well, or to the water.
So that
department.
35,000, I'm gonna use rough numbers. I think you said 35 or 38,000.
$34,000 would be the annual
Payment.
debt service if we take
So
out
it'd be
the
like
full
21,
780,000.
22,000 would be the town's responsibility for 30 years.
Why do you figure, I'm gonna try to figure, why 2/3?
Because the loan is 750,000, 500,000 is what we owe the water
Oh,
department.
I see, okay.
I mean, I think that's the simplest way to do it without,
So then you're saying the other third's coming out of the water department?
correct. And then all we have to do for this year is.
That's $11,000, almost $12,000.
Yeah.
Each,
So we adjust our rates and we can maybe go a little more to start getting ahead. We don't have to go to 14%.
We're having that conversation next week though, right?
The other rates.
Yeah.
One of the options on the table, and what we learned in our conversations through email with the bond bank and the state, is that even though the loan document is up to $780,000 and we sign it and execute it, the actual loan amount is based upon what we actually submit for reimbursement. So it could be a lot less. And I use the scenario of $500,000 just to be simple. And that way the $280,000 would come from either that undesignated fund balance or somewhere else, capital fund or whatever. But the objective would be to lower the annual debt payment.
But I thought they said it wouldn't lower, it would just decrease the years.
Not if we take out less loan. If we reduce it to $500,000 instead of the full amount, then it would reduce the annual debt payment based upon 500,000 instead of 780,000. So the question is, do we want to consider using some of that 490,000 to kind of buy down the balance of 280? So that's one question. And the bond bank fella, Ken, replied, well, to do that, you have an opportunity cost because you could be earning that money could be earning 4-point-something% when you're paying 2%. But I'm not sure how that plays out over 30 years because that 4% might not.
4%.
It might not stay that way,
Right.
but the ratepayers will stay on the hook for that $54,000 for 30 years, unless we pay it, even if we pay it off early, it just reduces it from 30 years maybe to 25. It reduces the length of the loan, but not the amount of the payment. Once that final reimbursement is submitted, that's the annual debt service. And what I thought I understood too was that debt service, whether it's $34,000 a year or something less, that will be added to whatever new debt we approach through these next phases, because we're going to incur additional debt through these next phases. And it's at least from that preliminary, those conversations we've had following Pine Street, they said, oh, you're gonna meet those thresholds with that project because it's gonna be, we're talking $5 million. And we're gonna try to buy as much of that down as possible through grants and other resources, including other loans, but that's gonna add up. And so that debt payment that we're paying for Pine Street is going to increase, and it's believed that, well, here we believe a lot of things, but that will make us eligible for the next round of subsidies, although, of course, those are all moving targets. We can't be certain what those are going to be at this point in time.
So what is you said the submitted amount, what is that actual amount?
Well, we've got over $700,000 in actual expenses that the water department in theory, through the capital fund has paid. But it's actually gone through the general fund.
For Pine Street,
Correct.
okay.
And so this loan would reimburse that money. Or some portion of it.
Back into the.
Because we've
general
already
fund, and then-
spent it.
And then it could be put back into the,
Well, you say general fund, it's really
well, it can be
combination of
put back
capital funds
into,
and whatever.
yeah, back into the capital funds that we
Right.
borrowed it from, and
Right.
then you can invest it and
Mhm.
Yeah.
then we
Right,
could.
we didn't really borrow any money from the capital
Right.
fund.
Yeah.
We borrowed it from the due to do from
Mhm.
line.
Yeah,
So, which all that tells me is that the treasurer prior did not move the water monies, the police monies, anything at the end of the year. Because that should have happened for those, like,
Right.
the fire department goes into, by statute, the fire capital building fund or whatever, the
Vehicle fund and there's
Thank you.
equipment.
And,
So
go ahead.
I don't wanna change the subject on you, but on the note of, the police department, have you checked them to see that they've got all their money over the last?
Everybody is owed money is the problem, but and if everybody came calling, that would be a problem.
No,
Like, if
but I
Bruce
mean,
wanted
is
to know-
does the police, is their undesignated fund balance correct? Or has that just been rolled into the general fund over the years?
I just want to try to clarify something that, just like, and I'm gonna use how we handle the general fund during our budget cycles, when at the end of the year, either the auditor tells us we've got X number of dollars of undesignated money that revenues either exceeded expectations or expenses were less than we budgeted for, and we end up with a balance at the end of the year, a so-called surplus. Those funds do not automatically, and with other departments, water, sewer, police, fire, highway, maybe highway's different. But those funds do not automatically roll over into a capital fund. They just kind of collect.
Yeah.
And which is how, and so at the end, during our budget cycles, we decide, oh, we've got this collected pot of money, so we're gonna take $20,000 and put it over here, take 30,000, put it over there. We can save 5% for the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
That's how I am seeing the same $490,000 for the water.
I totally get that,
Yeah,
and
me
the
too.
issue is that it should have been earmarked for water, and it shouldn't have been put in the 20,000.
I guess that's ultimately my question, is that when we had, this year, we had unassigned funds and we said, we're gonna put this much here, this much here, this much here. Was that truly just the general fund for
Yes.
the general fund? That didn't include the water, that
Correct.
didn't include.
Correct.
Did
you know,
include the water this year.
It,
If
no,
the- if
no,
the
that's
water
what
had
it's,
a
no, what
surplus.
I'm saying is, what we assigned
Because of the
didn't
codes.
include the unassigned funds for the water.
It will
So I
not-
was thinking we had spent their money, we didn't,
No.
it's still sitting there. We did not spend that, so
Well-
that's where I was like, okay, I need to understand where the
Right.
money, did we spend it already?
Well, yes,
But there's-
technically we have, because we put it in other reserve funds.
No, that's what
No.
we're saying, we didn't,
The
we
do-to-do
only
from
put in what
doesn't
was
allow
for
you
the
to
general.
take out.
But if that surplus was rolled into the general fund,
No, but what I'm saying is when they gave us the number, the number of unassigned, didn't not include water unassigned
Because it's
funds or
isolated
sewer
by the
unassigned.
codes.
It was
The
just
general
for
fund
the general fund.
is what, 07 or 03?
Oh, one,
Yeah, 001, and water's 3,
Water's 3.
septic is 7.
police is 8.
Yeah, so the codes keep it separate.
So
So
when
it
we
does,
did that,
what
when we
you're
did that,
saying, Peter, it does do for every single account that's not coded police, fire,
that all rolls in.
those all roll in. It
Mhm.
still tells us, hey, you rolled $100,000 from the rec department up into the general fund.
Yeah.
I read it.
There's a chat.
She had a chat there. Jill just wanted to know whether we recommended separate checking accounts for sewer and water.
So have
She
you-
makes a good point here. Shouldn't the surplus be invested in a CD with interest going to if it's water, going to the water department.
Mhm.
If it is water department money you're investing, the interest should go to the.
I would
water
agree
department.
with that.
Well, 500,000 of it wouldn't be. It's the general fund's money. If we take the loan for $750,000, it's the general fund's money because the general fund is paying it back. So that 500,000 would go to the
General fund.
General fund. It wouldn't be water department money at that point.
Right, I think the cleanest way accounting wise to be doing this is either to take the 780 and that's the loan from the water department to pay back the general fund and it just all goes to the general fund. Then I get directed on what to do with that money once it's there. That's the cleanest way to show an accountant,
To the 780, which it costs the new Pine Street.
because we paid it already out of the general fund.
Yeah.
That money's gone,
Right, but we're getting a loan to pay it back,
right,
but we don't know,
but
that's where I'm a little
But
confused.
that's, so we get the loan, the water department gets the loan, 750,000. They then reimburse the $750,000 to the general fund
Mhm.
for what we've already paid out. Then we can decide what to do with that
Well,
money.
the
later on.
general fund owes the water department.
Well, I know, but that's still there. That money's still there.
we still owe it to them though.
Right.
Like if
But-
Jill said I want to do a
It's
half a
not-
million dollar
It's there
project.
on paper, it's
Right.
not there in the account.
The
Right.
490.
Yeah.
And so a question is, do we want to use some of that 490 to pay down that loan?
I don't think so. I think we wanna.
I see your point, Peter, but what if we get denied on phase 2 after we got it built? And what if we get denied on phase 3 after we get it built? Not sure I want a huge loan. I'd like to see.
There wouldn't be a loan to the water department. That's what I'm saying. The water department's only gonna be liable for the $289,000. 500,000 of that's gonna be the general fund expense.
How do you explain that to the voters?
Do we have to?
We don't, I mean, it's easy enough to explain. It's money that the town used somewhere else from the water department and we have to
We
pay
owe
it
them.
back.
But and they already voted to do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's,
all the
it's
public
essentially money that
meetings.
the water department already has.
Yeah. I'd like,
It's using that to spend that.
That we have allocated in other places.
That's right.
Correct.
I'd like to see a combination of and I know you guys don't like combination, but I'd like to see like an 8 or 9% increase in the water rates.
Oh, I don't have a problem with the
Yeah.
increase in the water rates. I
But
think we still have to do
I
that.
don't think we
That's-
can talk about that until we.
Well, and see what that brings us for funds, so we can go to that question that Valerie has. Do we only borrow 500,000 or borrow 600,000?
What does the rates have to do with,
It's gonna raise revenue.
Paying back.
I understand that, but if
But
you're
at
looking.
2%, I think we take it. We'll use it for
So-
future projects.
Pika's first point that he mentioned was, if you take the full amount, then you know, at least the state knows how much debt you have. If we lessen that, do we then harm ourselves later, even though I know
I
we're
see
taking
that,
on
yes.
more? Does it come back where they're like, well, that first phase,
Yeah, where did you come up with that?
yeah, we had you down for 780, but you only took 500,000, that's a ding on you. Is something like that gonna happen? I would be very worried about that, knowing how complicated this is.
Jill just had another chat,
Mhm.
and
So I think,
it went away, so.
I think I'm with Peter in terms of taking the full amount and then investing it. Because it seems like even if we're paying the 2%, we're making 4%,
Yeah,
you know?
Jill's chat comment is the higher rates also make you eligible for more funding with their horrible funding calculation.
Correct.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Okay,
But
So,
they also have caps. And it's up to,
yeah,
so
and you
it's,
take too much.
or, do you qualify for any of it at some point?
I mean, so what the original amount that we requested is 780, correct?
Correct.
But our project came in cheaper than that.
Uh,
Not
You
by a
said
huge-
750. You said
not-
750 is what.
Yeah, not
what
by
we
a
paid
huge
out.
amount.
Right.
Um,
I think we were eligible for almost like 870 or 900,000. It's that our bids came in low.
Okay, I would
So
say take
You
the
want to shut the
780.
chat, otherwise it's recording
You know,
it.
you pay off the amount that the general fund or that we owe the water department. And then we invest that. That seems like the simplest thing.
so we pay it off with trying to get this, where the interest is gonna be, who's getting the interest? General fund
The
or-
general fund, I would say the general fund gets the interest on the 500,000 because they're gonna make the payments over the next 30 years on the 500, 490, whatever whatever
Mhm.
that loan amount is, that portion of the water bond will be borne by the general fund for 30 years.
And,
And it makes,
and because of this, it also changes that amount that we'll discuss next week in
Right.
terms of what those rates are. We initially had a rate that was added on,
14%.
right? And that changes now because of this money that,
Because their payment won't be
CMR.
34, well, the payment will still be 34, but they'll be getting
but,
in.
but
right.
not for the water department.
yeah,
Where-
their
yeah,
payment
well-
will be somewhere around $11,000-12,000.
Right.
Where I'm having a disconnect is the fact that we budget through the water budget, the debt payments. So the comment that it's
It'll
being
be
paid through the
revenue.
general fund, it's being paid through the water budget. We
Yes.
have to budget for those debt payments and raise the rates or adjust the rates to reflect those
Yeah,
obligations.
but there'll be an income though. There should be an income line
the
for
general
that, from the general fund for that amount.
So how do you, where do you put that in the general fund? Is it? Where is that, like, the bridge was paid for,
Or
or like,
like any other loan.
like Eric's come out of the highway, the bridge South Street come out of Eric's budget.
Yeah.
West Street paving come out of Eric's
It'll
budget.
come out of the general.
Come out of the
Yeah, general fund, just a
So
payment to the
depart-
water department
Yeah.
for,
Repayment of
Loan.
last
right.
year's,
well, I would just say loan.
Does that make sense?
I completely understand what everybody's saying, yeah.
Okay,
I'm just curious at why we wouldn't just give the water department their $496,000 and put all the money into the general fund. And have the general fund make the payment, and then the general fund gets the interest, and we can decide, you, the select board, not we, the select board can decide what to do with that.
Because the water department needs the debt.
For the future,
Oh.
for the
And
future.
That's the crux.
Thank you.
I would agree wholly with what you're saying if the water department didn't need the debt.
That's right.
And it's an enterprise fund. The general fund shouldn't be set up to pay for certain things out of the water department. It should be all within the water department. The general fund is simply a pass through.
It is all from the water, so I guess you're not, it's all from the water department. The general fund is gonna pay
The water.
the water department the loan amount.
or they're paying back.
And they don't have to
The
pay, yeah, by 2/3 or whatever it ends up being, you know?
I find it's simpler to say the general fund is paying back a $498,000 loan that's been misappropriated over 20 years.
I don't know about
1930.
misappropriated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we don't wanna,
Well,
that's.
I won't say misappropriated, it's a bad term, that's, you're right, but it's,
just been
to say that the general fund's gonna pay the water department for Pine Street's infrastructure.
No, we're paying the water department for a loan that we took, which
It would be like if we took a loan from the revolving loan fund to do this.
Yeah.
We'd have a line item saying payment to
it would be
RFL, you know.
no different than taking if we borrowed that $490,000 from the water department.
We did.
If we borrowed it from the bank, we'd have to make a payment to the bank. So instead of making a payment to the bank, we're making a payment to the water department.
So they're going to, under the revenue line, they're showing a payment.
Right,
Yeah.
They're gonna show
$22,000.
miscellaneous income or however we're gonna put it,
A
yeah.
lot of miscellaneous income.
It's a lot to keep track of too. I would think that we would just transfer that 490,000 or whatever it turns out to be ultimately. Put it maybe into the capital fund, just move it there. It's in the capital fund. We can tap into that capital fund for the future projects if we need to. Or, you know, because we do have other
I-
future capital things that we
I
know
think
about.
the thing that makes me nervous is,
The state,
well, the state and losing that 400 and some odd $1,000 that we didn't intend on taking out of the general fund. You know, we've been fortunate, we've come in under budget on most everything for the past few years because we've had employees, positions that haven't been filled and that.
where
but-
people left.
Yeah, and
So right now, due to the water department is $493,000, $493,449.53.
But we would be paying them, we would just be paying them over time.
correct.
That's,
The only,
right, and you're arguing.
It is easier, I'm not gonna,
yeah.
it's much easier to take the loan and write them
Yeah.
493 than it is. It just,
But we can't get it back from them if we need
I know.
it, right? So.
No, we can't.
Except as a capital expense.
Right.
Oh, you mean,
If we
we
do it
take
that
out the full loan amount
And then pay them right off.
and we pay,
But what Peter's
town
worried about
pays-
is then we lose any
Debt service.
liquidity, right?
Well, I know that it's just numbers.
Right.
Right.
It's all our money, no matter, that's exactly what Darlene said.
Do we
None
know
of this
what-
matters, it's your money.
we don't
You're
know
gonna-
what projected, what a surplus is gonna be out of the regular general fund.
God, no.
But
No, we don't.
Not till the end.
But if we play out a hypothetical, so like if we do pass that money to the water department, it is now in their budget, and we have some kind of disaster in some other area.
We'd end up.
We would have to
We'd
borrow,
end up
right.
borrowing
Right.
money and probably paying more than 2%.
Or,
But
but we
could you
can
get it
then
back
borrow
from
money
the-
from ourselves.
So we could pull
Well,
it back from the water
Well,
department.
do we want it in the
if we
water
needed to.
department if then they see that as a revenue?
Yeah, I don't know. how
Because then the
easy
state
it
in 2
is.
years said, oh, you didn't qualify again because you got too much money.
Uh,
I see it.
Jill's shaking her head.
So
She's right.
I'm a C-level executive in finance, just by the way. So past revenue is not current revenue, and a savings account is not new revenue. It's past revenue. So like you're not gonna receive, in the way that the state does their SRF funding, you're not gonna receive a penalty for having money saved up. They don't look at your savings account. They look at your rates, they look at your debt payments.
and
they-
how much we're allocating each year towards capital.
Yep, they look at that. So this is in the past. This is money that was paid by ratepayers. So it was, water rents in minus expenses out. Of course, other lines included. This was money that was paid by ratepayers. That's extra money in the water enterprise fund. So I'm not sure of the legal technicalities on an enterprise water fund, and that's why if whatever it is that's gonna happen with these funds, you may just wanna clear that with NEMRIC to understand how can funds from an enterprise account, that being water is one, sewer is another, be utilized, because they are paid for by only the rate users. They're not paid for by the tax base.
We can't take money from
Money.
those two accounts. We have plenty of accounts we can take money from.
But the Pine Street project, that was a bond vote by taxpayers, right?
That's.
Yeah.
Everybody
Everybody had to
Everybody has
approve
to
it.
approve.
With
Because
water
the whole
paying.
town is on the hook if the water department goes default, the
Right.
town has to pay the note back.
So Jill, what are your thoughts about the paying over 30 years to the water department versus a lump sum to the water department? Do you have thoughts on that?
It looks yucky. That's just my personal thought. I would borrow the entire amount.
What's
I would
yucky,
borrow-
sorry? Which one looks yucky to you? Pouring it over time or paying it over time or paying the water department?
I
The
would just-
town sending
I
the
would-
water. whole
I
check.
just do two distinct transactions. One, you take the full loan and you pay the general fund back because you use the general fund's money for Pine Street. And that way the general fund is reimbursed the 780,000. And that way the water doesn't owe the general fund and you get your cash flow and your money back and you're no longer the loan. I also think the second transaction would be to take the undesignated fund balance that belongs to water and put it in water. And if you guys own the water system, you own the town, you have the government responsibility for all the different pieces and parts. If there's cash flow issues on whichever end and things need to be borrowed, another journal entry gets done to record what's being borrowed or whatnot, and a different decision gets made. But at least then it's like everything that's supposed to be where it's supposed to be has been put there.
Yeah.
And then you do
So-
whatever you have to do.
And
So
just
let me
so
ask you this.
can
Why
borrow
are you
from
raising my
funds.
water rates when you have a $500,000 sitting in the bank?
Because we've got
I'm
$10
not just John Q. Public.
Yeah.
Yep, come to the meeting and you wanna raise my
Well,
water
that's,
rates.
but the other scenario is we only take out a $500,000 loan and use the 280 to pay off the general fund. So the combination of the 500 from the bond bank plus the 280 from this undesignated fund goes to pay off the loan.
And then we owe them
Or
another.
pay off the
We owe
general
them
fund.
another two.
Yeah, I mean, I see the water system as probably like $20 to $25 million worth of liabilities. It's $20 to $25 million worth of assets as well. You guys have in ground almost 20 miles of water line. You have a storage tank, you have a treatment plant, you have all these individual services. It's very valuable, but it's also costly to keep up with it every 100 to 150 years. So, I don't know, there's definitely a balance between how fast to increase rates. I just know that the West Street project is already in design. There's already expenditures and we haven't even talked about how that's gonna get paid for yet.
I mean, partly with this influx of money that allows us to do more incremental rates over the next 5 or 10 years. Without this, they would be jumping quite high every year. So that's one positive.
Yeah, the other side of it is they probably wouldn't be where they are if we'd known that this money existed in the past when we did rate increases.
Right.
So it's, it works both ways.
And we might have paid down some Pine Street. If we know we get 498,000, we'd say, well, we want 500,000. And we're gonna pay 290,000 towards the project.
Right, the other piece is by state statute, in February of 2023, the Vermont State Legislature put out, here's how you do your EUs. Bristol is definitely not following it in any way, shape, or form. A lot of it has to do with how you designate them when a new business comes in. Our restaurants in particular are getting sweet, sweet deals compared to what the state says we should be charging them to what we do. It looks, so one, any person that owns a home that has an apartment building as a dwelling unit, that's 2 EUs. We're charging everybody 1 EU right now. So Stan Livingston on Plank Road, he gets 1 EU charged even though there's 12 apartments there. Just making that change alone has increased our dwelling units or EUs. Right now, Chris and I have it 100 and something more, and we're not even done. He's going through every record right now to see how many dwelling units are on the listers tag. So that will increase what I'm envisioning, and I don't know, I'm not the water department, but that increases Jill's ability to have a capital fund and have money available to start paying things without a rate, a very minimal rate increase to any, right?
And then we explain it as it's equity, right? Like 12 apartments should not pay the same as one.
No, and unfortunately, those are the only people that are gonna get hit hard. I really tried, you'll see next Monday, to make rates based on commercial eateries, commercial non-eateries, mixed use, and then residential. And it's people like Woodland Apartments has been paying 1. That's insane. There's 32 apartments there at my count. She says 40 on her website, and so like, they're gonna get hit. But then I tried to take that and say like, okay, what's a reasonable rate for somebody like Shauna Sherwin that owns an apartment complex or an apartment building that has 4 apartments in it. Hers is gonna go up drastically because she's been paying 1 with no overage for anybody in that apartment because there's 4 different dwellings there. And so we've been internally saying, oh, well, they're not using 40,000 gallons every quarter. So those are the people, and I think there's 36 so far that we found that are gonna get hit the hardest with any increase because they're starting to pay for their EUs that they should have been paying for all along.
How does the school work for EUs?
So that's part of the conversation for next week. What the state's recommendation is to go through, if it was a new school, it would be to assign them based on classroom square footage and everything. And then after their first year, you then recalculate their EUs based on their water usage. I took everybody's water usage that's a commercial or large property like a school. So one of our businesses downtown that we know has a leak. And so I took their water usage and their bill only goes up about $100 with a flat rate versus if we continue with this crazy formula that Nemrick doesn't even know how to use in our system. And so if we go to flat rates and then Jill knows exactly how much money's coming in, if everybody pays their bills. A new person moving into Bristol, I can say, based on an average house, your 1 EU, you're gonna use $82 a month. Instead of this, well, we're gonna have to calculate the last 12 months of your usage, and then we're gonna give you a rough estimate of what it will be next year. No town does that anymore. Like towns either go to, you pay per gallon or you pay a flat rate.
So if we played a flat rate, we wouldn't need meters?
Yes, you would, because you're gonna pay for
Yeah.
Overage.
Overage,
Yeah.
okay.
So, and again, that's
Flat rate's based on minimum amount of usage.
correct,
Yeah.
for a residential
Septic
user,
is metered that, okay.
No, so,
for a residential user, mixed use
like the guy on North
and,
Street bought our property, he's had a curb stop there for 4 years, he's gonna pay an EU charge, even though he hasn't used it.
well, that's gonna be up to the select board to decide, because currently,
Yeah.
No, the water commissioners, select board's not making that.
Select
sorry, the
board.
water commissioners to decide
Alright.
when does the EU
Okay.
start.
Yeah, all right, let's
We'll
go back.
wait
Yeah, let's go back to the
Yeah.
bond.
Let's go back to
We're
our
gonna cover all this
Right.
next week.
Yeah, let's go back to the bond.
So I'm in the mind of doing potentially the full
Yes.
780.
Either way, we're gonna borrow the full amount, is what I'm hearing. No matter how we divvy it up, it sounds like we're borrowing the full amount. Everybody's on the same page with that one, so we can move forward with that, and then the rest of it.
I mean, maybe the cleanest way would be for the water department to borrow the whole amount of money. And then write a check back to us, and then we write the check back to them for the 500,000. I mean, that solves everybody's issues. It still has them on the hook for the loan, because it's giant, right?
I
And
think
that's,
that would be cleaner than seeing it every year, taking 22,000 out of the general fund and sending it to the water department. I think that would be cleaner.
it's just, I'm gonna tell you right now that Bristol historically has not been good about when you say, for the next 30 years, you're doing this, people, the person
Forget.
leaves, nobody writes it down, there's no way to document it in here. And so the cleanest way, Darlene's in my ear, is saying, have somebody borrow the money, have that person pay their debts. They still look like they have a ton of debt over there, and then we just give the water department the money that's owed to them.
Okay,
And then Jill, as the water department, can decide, does she take her $496,000 and use it for her loan? Or does she take it and put it into capital investments?
Well, but then,
Well, that's
so
up to
the
the water.
water
department.
department.
Sure, whoever makes those decisions. I'm using Jill because I know Jill.
I was like, I don't make those decisions. The water commission does.
The 790 from the bond bank next week, you say, and then,
To me, that's gonna give Jill room to negotiate for the next phase, because look how much in debt we are, we need more financial aid.
right, no, let me walk this
Yeah.
through, so they write you a check for 790 to the water department. And then we take that and pay off the town 790 minus the 500.
Mhm.
No,
Or
you
490.
No,
You pay the
that
whole.
whole
thing.
thing.
And then
Two
the town writes us a
transactions.
check back,
Separate transactions.
Yeah.
separate,
So you can-
the
you
town
can
writes
connect
us
the
a
dots.
check back for the
Yeah,
488
and
or
it
498.
keeps the full debt with the water department.
And then it's not
Follow
there,
the money.
then it's not there every year for 30 years in the general fund, correct? It's
No.
paid one time shot.
Correct.
I like that one better than.
To clean it up.
And
30
Jill,
years,
the
forget it.
money would come out of the water department.
Right.
Yeah.
We
But
want
water-
that money, we want that money to come out of the water department because it hits the budget, and the budget is what the state looks at for eligibility. They take the budget, basically the expenses and the rates, and they compare that to the median household income, and until it really hurts, they're not giving us great money.
I
And
think we
then-
should vote on this and have this be the fastest meeting we've ever had.
Yeah, I have to leave at 7.
I do too.
So then, and then when they write us a check, the town, because there's 3 water users here and 2 not. Then we take that, have you take that money and invest it at a 4.9. or
The water department.
The
The
water
water
department.
department, invest it.
And
And then the
they
water department
gets
takes
the interest,
Yeah.
which is way easier for me, because if the general fund gets the interest, I then have to go through and calculate every single department's portion of interest that they should get.
Oh, no.
And so it would be way easier to keep this all with the water department, but
And we're,
I
we
will
have future
do-
projects, so we
Right.
need that
Yeah,
revenue.
okay, I like that,
Let's do it.
so.
That money sounds good for smart meters, huh, Jill?
There you go.
I know, if
No,
we
it's
just
not.
invest that, if we get 150, is it every 7 months or every year?
what part?
For the CD.
The interest.
Every 7 months,
Every 7 months, that 500,000 would make 150,000?
141, blah, blah, blah.
How can that be?
Because
I think that doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right.
The loan officer did it today on the phone.
Maybe it's-
There's a
I'm gonna
decimal
verify
point.
that too.
10,000.
There's a decimal point on it.
There's a decimal,
At
maybe
least.
$14,900. I
Yeah,
think that sounds more right.
500,000 can't earn
That's
100,000.
25,000 in a year.
And that's not, then you keep that money there, though. Oh, wait, say that again?
25,000 a year, if you're at 5%, right? 500,000 times 5%. Times 5% gives you 25,000.
For a
For-
month. because the interest is compounded monthly
Monthly?
at
Oh,
both those banks.
So is that 5% annual or monthly?
Over the 7 month.
Right, I
period, so
understood
maybe
I can call my
it's
loan
like
officer, I
10.
can call a loan officer right now, and ask that question.
Monthly.
Because
is
if it's
what it is.
monthly, it's 175,000 and
Should have brought a loan
that
council.
doesn't make
So-
sense.
This is
But I
National
like
Bank
that.
of Middlebury's,
But I like
So
That's
this-
APR.
right, that's at the end of the year,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is the interest rate for the month. And so I took this and did the interest rate of the month and then calculated one APY at the end of it. And I called National Bank of Middlebury, Mascoma, and they all agreed with my math.
Boy, that
What?
doesn't make sense.
I agree, I said the same thing, there's no way that
Why
this.
haven't we been doing this?
That's like, it's like 25% interest.
Right.
Damn, that's like, let's just take mortgage out on your house and go invest it, right?
No,
Yeah, that
people try
doesn't-
that before it never works.
Yeah, I was
out.
like,
That doesn't seem,
Let's triple check that. But
Okay.
anyway,
But
no
either
matter
way,
what,
right, no
we're gonna be
matter what.
earning money on this,
Right.
which is good. And that's great for the water department.
So what I'm hearing is we're gonna go for the full loan. That full loan is gonna pay off the general fund, the full amount, because the total expenses come out of the general fund. And then we have this $490,000 that's gonna be given back to the water department. The only place that I know of that it can go is the capital fund, because there's no other account for it to just sit there. Is my
Mhm.
understanding. But even so, it can still be invested. And the entire capital fund can be invested.
Mhm.
So we don't have to limit it to that number. It can be whatever that asset is in the
Right.
capital fund, because it's not, it's earmarked for capital things. So it's not like we're gonna need it, the
Right.
full amount tomorrow
what's in there
necessarily.
now?
And also
Not that
too,
much in there.
We were concerned about the unassigned funds,
In the
but
water department.
know that we're also a year behind. We were using
Right.
2023 or 2,
2022
and we
numbers.
don't even know 2023, so.
Right. Well, this 490,000 figure is as of this last week.
Right, so we know
So
for that, but
That
for the other
includes,
ones. that we
yeah,
looked at.
this current fiscal year.
But hopefully now that we're back into a place where we can actually have the treasurer calculate this, when we start doing the budget,
Right.
we'll know exactly what our unassigned funds are
Right.
gonna be, because we'll see everything is up to.
Right, that sounds refreshing.
And I think
Totally.
it would be curious to what people consider unassigned funds versus,
Correct.
because to me, this is not unassigned, like this money is assigned to the water
Right,
department.
right.
And so like, it's not unassigned, it's just
No, it
misplaced right
was-
now.
But we used it as unassigned because it got lumped into the general fund.
Correct.
But to transfer that amount of money over to the water department, there's no specific account line for it to go other than miscellaneous revenue, and we don't wanna do that. We don't wanna deposit $490,000 as miscellaneous.
No, we would
revenue.
want to put it in its capital
Makes
fund.
sense.
Exactly, yeah, where it can roll over and not,
Correct.
not.
You don't know, you don't
Yes.
really have to show that on the budget because this is past.
Exactly.
Correct.
Don't show it on the budget. Please don't
No,
show it on
never,
the budget.
never, never,
That's
never.
what I'm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I entertain a motion, and we all set? Is this?
I make a motion that we accept the $780,000.
One bank payment for
So you're
I
finding
second.
a order to borrow
I
money.
second.
And so the chair signs that. and-
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you wanna, do you wanna add to your motion that it's by the water department? Or
I don't know if the water department can borrow the money. I think the town has to,
Yeah,
the town has to borrow the money because the town bonded for it. The town voted,
Exactly.
so the town has to borrow the money.
but we
The
can
money
show
will
where
go
the
in.
debt goes
Right.
We can show that it paid the debt for Pine Street.
in the water department, so it looks like the water department's carrying the debt.
So the water department will be carrying.
Carrying it. And they'll be making the payments.
So we need to all vote though. Right. So I
Yeah.
seconded.
Okay. We have a
So
motion and a second.
I signed it.
In a different world.
All those in favor? Wait, any more discussion on the $780,000 miscellaneous?
In a different world, I think the water department could have borrowed the money up front, interim financing. Perhaps instead we took out a tax anticipation note, we could have taken out a bond
Bond anticipation
anticipation.
note. Okay.
That would have been a water department expense. So it would have all stayed within that enterprise
Oh,
fund,
yeah.
but
We don't-
because it was a general
Joel
fund,
does, but
Just
tax
the-
anticipation.
Yeah.
interim
Yeah.
financing, That's why.
Right.
But-
And we can
We're gonna be
discuss
next
that
week
further.
for 3.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a crusher.
Yeah,
Do I need to sign? We don't need to sign.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh.
abstain?
We appreciate your support.
An extra eye.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Right,
As
okay.
long as it
I
wasn't
know
this.
better.
I'll look
Is
at
that what they
it.
say? Tell me the ayes have it? Oh, the ayes have it, okay. Anything other?
No.
Make a motion to, anyone make a motion to adjourn, Michelle?
Motion
adjourn.
Michelle
Do we-
Bigger or
do
Michelle?
Jim showed up. Do we want to see if Jim has any comments?
Any comments, Jim? We started at six. We
It's
started,
six.
You got the bid out, that's what I think.
Yeah.
yeah, we started at 6.
Oh, okay.
We had just a water, we have our water commissioner hats on, not our select board hats.
Jill, is there anything else you wanted to add before we call it a night?
No, I think we're up for a big one next Monday. I just have to say I'm very, very happy that things are turning in a positive way. And I love that you guys have a treasurer that understands Nemrick.
Yay.
Yay, it's wonderful.
Jill, just, how did South Street turn out last week?
Oh, cool.
Your leak is after a hidden meter pit at Lathrop's Lumberyard.
Oh, no.
Yep. Yeah, so we've ordered a replacement meter because the meter was underwater, given the fact that the meter pit probably hadn't been open in 30 or 50 or 60 years. It also hadn't been read. There's just a little tiny touchpad in the office there, but there's actually a service line going to the shop that goes through a hydrant on its way there. So Cyrus met with Justin. They discussed that it needs to be repaired swiftly. A 4-inch meter has been ordered. We will replace that. We will put a touchpad on it, and if your treasurer could make a billing account for that, we'd appreciate it. I would love to know if there's anything in the books on previous billings for a meter pit there, because there's probably been a whole lot of years of unbilled water use.
And because it's a leak going into the ground.
Oh, gosh.
After a meter pit, so it should essentially have been measured if a meter reader, if a touchpad had been there, and if the connection was actually on the list of meters to be read.
Okay.
But you've never read it.
No, I didn't even know it was there. We just kept hearing it just whoosh, like
This is what
whooshing and whooshing.
Yeah. Okay,
Positive motion forward.
Yeah, good work,
all right,
everybody.
thanks, Jill.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.